Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up, everybody? So yeah, BVM D24. I'm just gonna start setting it up as people are joining. If anybody has any questions or anything, please let me know. I'm Oh, hey, thanks so much, Dreaming in Retro. Um, Raceroni, what's going on? So yeah, it's the typical laid-back live stream. I got the boom mic over here-ish, kind of behind where my butt is. So the volume's gonna get quieter and louder, but it's not about me. It's for yeah, it's I think it's just the way it's going to be, unfortunately. I could try to do a boost, but then you might just all you might hear is air conditioning. So I'll move the mic a little closer, but so this one will definitely be available afterwards. So if anybody comes in late, um just yeah, just scream uncomfortably the whole time. Yeah, so if anybody comes in late, just let them know, please, that this is going to be up. Um, but let's go through it. So, flat glass, 16 by 9 widescreen, multi-sync Sony BVM. This thing is totally cool. It's a friend's, it's not mine, but it has all of the accessories, including a flight case, as well as the rack to mount the controller here. Team Mini My present. Min My, thank you so much for the super chat. Really, really appreciate it. Okay, let me spin this thing around, show you its back. Make sure I get that a little bit better on camera. So, yeah, let's see them inputs. Exactly. So, let me move the chat out of the way here so I can see everything here. All right, that makes sense. So I'll just go over for the basics for anybody who's never seen one of these or was kind of curious. I'll try to move my mic closer when possible. But so I'm still in view. Yeah. So each piece of this BVM is its own little module, and all of the higher end BVMs are kind of like this. So this is a removable piece. The power supply. This is just an empty plate to get through. But each one of these have their own module, and that's why Steve from RetroTech shows a lot in his videos about only recapping certain individual ones of these. So, uh, to go through the ones that are here, we have the ISR control board, which is going to be in every BVM. This is one that everything's going to have one of these to help for control as well as programming what's inside. Over here is the 41HD, which has HD SDI, which could also do SDI. So this could not do 480i, believe it or not, but it can, or not do 480p, but it can do 480i and it can do 720p and 1080i. I have yet to find a reason why anybody would want HD SDI over component video. I'm sure, you know, there could be like a workflow thing. Like you already have SDI for your setup. This is something that a lot of pro streamers would probably have run into. But for most people, including me, who's, you know, remember, I do this for a living and I'm kind of a super nerd, I still never use SDI component. Now, in my previous testing, I've seen SDI look better because it's digital, but that's only because I had garbage component cables. Once I switched to the HD Retrovision RCA to RCA, everything kind of fell into place. Down here is component video only. So if it were me hooking this board up, component video would go to the 41HD, and this board over here, the main one that comes with it, has RGBS. So this could accept both component and RGB, but I would dedicate this one to RGB and this one to component just because it doesn't have a sync input. Now over here is it looks like two 20D cards, which means you could have S video via I think 2 and 3, or SDI, or composite video. I mean, this thing's loaded. I think, hopefully my friend who gets this will pull one of these out just to save for another one of the D-series BVMs. And you could also do component video on this as well. So if you really wanted to, if you had 3 component video consoles, 1 composite video, 1 S video, and RGB, you wouldn't even need a switch. You could just plug them all into here and kind of go from there. There's also the main kill switch, which I always leave off on all of my BVMs. I'm just a paranoid nerd. I don't want to take any chances, so those are off 24/7. Let's see what we got in the... I'm going to be checking the chat as I go through this as well. How much would this sell for at auction? So here's the thing. You hear a lot of times about scalped BVMs, and people paying insane prices and all that stuff, but you got to understand what's in this one. You have every card imaginable. It's been recapped. You have the mounting bracket down here, and that's what this cable is. This is just simply a cable that goes from the front control board here. I'm sure if I wanted to, I could hunt down one that was a foot shorter and right angled, but I'm not going to obsess. This is totally fine. But it's got all of this and a flight case. And that alone goes for hundreds of dollars, because you could basically, you know, flight cases wear out, so you'd have to double check the foam, you'd want to reinforce the glass, but you basically just lock this thing down and can ship it in there. It's a little more precaution than that, but so this was very, very expensive. This was over $5,000, but once again, you're getting everything with it. You're not just getting the monitor, and we knew the condition it was in. Aim that down a little bit more. So let's plug it in and check out settings and stuff. So before I turn it on, here are the status lights. Check these. So by powering on the main switch, you see the standby light is going to start to flash. Then it's going to power on, and then it might even say initializing for like a full minute or so before we could even get into the menus. All of that's totally normal. Yep, initializing. And if you saw when the screen was kind of white and coming up like that, you saw like a weird curve. There's nothing wrong with the monitor. That is totally normal for all of these things. Railers Swim, that's probably more than its original value. These were like 30 grand. So no, not even remotely close. This is a broadcast monitor, yeah. For use on, so all of the multi-format monitors were when HD era started, but all of the flat panel stuff that was out wasn't able to be as accurate as a CRT. So big shops needed ones like this in the D32 to still calibrate all of their movies. Now, I remember seeing a $20,000 JVC rear projection monitor that was meant for color correcting, and even that fell short of these. So yeah, this is definitely high-end stuff. I mean, you know, you wouldn't usually see a BVM just in a place where you needed a high-end CRT. You'd see PVMs there. These were definitely in broadcast studios and meant for color calibration, and just like, this is what people would use when calibrating their blockbuster movies. Like, I bet you, you know, when Terminator 2 came out, somebody was using a BVM to calibrate it. And whatever the movies were in the early 2000s, it would be something like this. Is there a warm-up time? Yeah, it's already warmed up. When you saw initialization. Why the heck can't I say that word? Initialization or initializing pop up. The card is for firmware updates and to backup settings. It's a PCMCIA slot. Steambub, what's the best way to buy this? Pray to whatever God you believe in. All kidding aside, these things are incredibly rare and they're going way up in price. I heard the 32-inch one of them just sold for 15 grand. So they're, you know, it's just like anything else in life, right? If you want a car, you go buy a car. You could lease a cheap one for $150 a month. But you want a nice car, you got to pay a lot. And you want a nice classic car, you got to pay not only to buy it, but sometimes even to rebuild it, or pay top dollar to have it rebuilt. So definitely not for everybody. This one was made in 2005. That's pretty impressive. I have not tried the BVM OLED, but Lewis did. Check out Zez Retro, the video on that. Do I think in the next 5 to 10 years we will see mass-produced CRTs? Definitely not. In order to get that bargain bin consumer-grade TV down to the $99 they sold for back in the day, there was like $1 billion facility, and they had to make them in quantities of like 100,000. So I would say it's way more likely to see really nice low-lag monitors that could perform with less motion blur. So maybe 10 years from now, we'll have an 8K OLED that runs at 240 hertz that'll perform just as well. I'm gonna grab a little stool here and just start to kind of go through some of the settings, and then I'll plug a console in. Steam Bulb, it was easier to get like 3 or 4 years ago. They showed up every few months. Yeah. Wouldn't it be effective to make new ones if you were going for 5 to 15K? Making something like this by hand might take a month, and it would probably sell for, you know, a month's wages for the 3 people it would take to do it. So I don't think it would be. I think restoring the ones that are already out there would probably be a better bet. So let me just go in and start to go into some of the menu settings. It's been a while since I've gone through, so let me adjust my mic. So I might forget where everything is, but we'll just kind of go through. So these are some of the presets that you could copy from the memory card, which I've never done, because I think when people were setting up presets in broadcast studios, it wasn't just presets for inputs, it was presets for controllers that would, you know, you'd have one of these controllers potentially controlling 10 of these, and then this light would go on to show whichever one of these was controlling it. So, you know, if you wanted to, like, if you had 5 of these in a row and one of them died, you don't want to reprogram it from scratch, so you would just use the presets that you had. Color temperature adjust, that's those are for color calibration. Oops, wrong button. Setup. So input configuration, we're going to be in there quite a bit today, so I'm not even going to bother with that. Remote, this is the controller. This is the remote right here that we're looking at. System configuration. So basic stuff. Standby mode off, input select direct. On-screen setup. All kind of basic options. Makes sense. And also, as a note, all of these menus are in 480i, so you could kind of, I'm not sure if you could see in the video, but you can kind of see the interlacing effect here. Alignment, this is also another one that we're going to be in today, and this is one of the only things that I suggest messing with regardless of rebuilt status. So I always talk about, you don't want to try to calibrate something and go crazy with it if it doesn't have new capacitors in it, because if it has bad capacitors, not only are you going to have to recalibrate it anyway, you could calibrate it way past the point. But when you're just talking about H and V position and rotation, no problem. No problem at all. Actually, let me see. I think there are other pages here. Are they? Yeah. So these are the things that you probably wouldn't want to touch unless you knew that there was already a cap replacement, everything was done, or at least the capacitors were in really good shape. But page 1, that's the easy stuff. And if you're ever worried about basic stuff like this, just write down these numbers and put it back the way it was when you're done, and you should be fine. White uniformity, that's another color balance thing. Let me show the other page just in case. I see some chats up there. I'm kind of far away from the screen, but I'll get back up in a second to see it. So it has different values for different types of stuff. That's always pretty cool. Extend menu. Wasn't it just 4 1 or 5 ones? Yeah, how about that? 5 ones. So reload factory data, don't do that. Memory card, we don't have one in. Restart monitor, I don't know why you wouldn't just power it off. I know that option's there for people controlling it remotely, but us, just leave it. Vcr mode, that is the mode that allows tolerance for sync. So you've seen a bunch of the videos where you see the image curling up in the corner. That's because these monitors weren't really designed for weird signals, but sometimes VCRs, just basic tapes, have much weirder sync than even weird video games do. So having that on is what makes these so compatible with video games. In the maintenance menu, also wouldn't recommend messing with this at all. I'm just going to kind of go through and show what it is. Restore factory set, I would never do that unless you've exhausted every single other option. Same with like a lot of the setup stuff. I just wouldn't really touch these unless you absolutely knew what you were doing. So I'm going to back out of there. Back out of there too. Yeah, so that's basically it. I gotta find the hours in here too. I kind of forgot where those were. Extend menu. Maybe it wasn't here. Drawing a blank. Status. I think I was right in the main. Yeah, okay. Beautiful. So, software version, I think that's the highest. Operation time, 36,000 hours, 549. But here's the thing. A lot of these monitors, if it's in standby, so if we press power, the power goes off and it's in standby, it counts that as powered on operation time because the main power boards still have power going to it, but the tube itself isn't actually being powered. Some of the later monitors, the A series, take the operation time and separate it. So power on time and CRT time. So every time it's in standby, the CRT time doesn't click forward. However, I really stopped caring about hours to a point because I have a monitor with 100,000 hours on it that came from Pat, the BVM tech, who said it was definitely the original tube and it looks brand new. So what probably happened was they had it powered on and powered on, not just standby, the whole time, but didn't have anything sent to it. So like right now, the tube itself, the beam of the tube, is drawing this image. So if I left this on for days, it could burn in and it would be using the tube the whole time. But when it's off, as soon as this goes off, the tube's not firing. There's nothing being drawn on the screen. So if I just let this sit for 10 years and only used it once a day for an hour, it would barely have any use on it. You still might have to replace all the capacitors because it is powered on, but the tube itself would still be good. So hours of operation is a good reference. It's something you should definitely check. If there is a story behind it, you should listen, but just because something has low hours doesn't mean that it's perfect. And also, you could just reset those hours back to 0, which is a little dishonest. But on the flip side, just because it has a ton of hours does not mean that it's a bad monitor. Also, if they had a tube replacement, board recap, whatever else. So I'm going to jump onto the chat and answer any questions, and then I'm going to hook a console up to it. The importer, thank you so much for the super chat. That's hysterical. Aaron, I still do have the BVM-D32. I rarely use it, just because it's just a special thing for me. I don't want to put too much use on it, you know. How do I do color balance? I have my friend Phil come over with his little utility that plugs into the back. You suction cup it on the front. You press a button and it calibrates itself. So I never have to worry about it. Yeah, the audio is going to be quiet. I'm using a boom mic, but even quiet, it's still going to be way better quality than when I was using my Bluetooth headset. What's up, Beast? Speedy, that's not quite true. I just showed the menu setting before, so you could change the status of what happens after a power failure. So if you have this hooked up to a switch box and you turn off the main power kill switch and you turn it back on, if you have that setting in here, so it would go back to standby or it would go to power. This one is set to go back to power. That could be changed. But I like to kill the switch in the back because of lightning strikes, because of power surges, because of anything else that you could imagine. You might as well just manually kill the power to everything. How much does it weigh? I mean, it's, you know, it's a little heavier than the D20, but it's not nearly as heavy as the D32. It's pretty heavy. I'd say that. Oh, am I out of... Yeah, if anybody in the chat could just remind newcomers that this is about as loud as it's going to get. I can try turning up the volume a little bit, but it's not going to be... There might be more AC than voice. So, let me hook up a source to it. I'm going to use my Sega Nomad in RGB. I'm just going to get some SCART to BNC cables. Robert Lawrence, this is going to be just saved under live streams, so feel free to go back to get the whole run through at some point. Erwin, yes, this is Sony, so it uses the Trinitron mask, not anything else like that. How does this compare against an OLED for 480p or higher? That's a good question. I'll come back to that later. But it depends on what you want. For 720p, it basically looks like an OLED with worse geometry. So anything 720p and up for movies and stuff, I would usually watch on a flat panel. 480p, I love the way 480p looks on CRTs. And if you watch old movies or TV shows, it cuts right through the film grain. I think it's amazing. So, all right, let me grab some cables. I still don't quite know where everything is after reorganizing, so it might take me a minute. Okay, nice. I got myself a SCART to BNC cable, and I just need RGB SCART cable for the Nomad, which I think I should have right here. Coder kind. The big attraction for these is the widescreen for you. Yeah. I mean, if the content that you're looking to play is 16 by 9, then yes, this would be pretty incredible. But if not, then it's just kind of, I don't want to say useless because it's an amazing monitor, but, well, you'll see. It's a nice good shielded cable. And I'm going to be hooking this up to that first input I showed before. And we'll make sure that's set to RGB. Because the other ones are the... Yeah, actually, this is the only one with the sync input, so that makes perfect sense. James Campbell said in this chassis, the tube can only handle 1080i and 720p. In a PC chassis, it handles 1080p. So you mean the FW900? Yeah, different power supply, different boards on there. Same tube, I believe, though. If I'm going to bring out an N64. No, Chris. Sorry, N64 is not really my jam. Okay. So, let me go into what you all would expect me to go into first. My favorite game of all time. Beautiful. So, obviously this was already set to RGB. So just to kind of go through again, I know it's going to be hard to see on camera, but I'm just going to do this quick. We go into Setup, Input Configuration, and it already says Channel 2. So if I press this Channel 2 button, is configured as RGB from the right slot, the correct input numbers, external sync, which is the S. So this is the type of thing where if we were using PlayStation 2 sync on green, you would just use the sync button to switch to that. Screen mode 4:3 normal. So that's another thing I like to do is I save different inputs for 4:3 or 16:9, so I don't have to go into these menus each time. I could just press the input button. That's basically it. Let's go check out some other options. Test patterns, monoscope. So the geometry here, you can see a tiny bit of curve around that, and it's not quite centered. So here's the other menu that I was going to go through to show you before. So setup, nope, alignment, and here's what I'm completely and totally comfortable messing around with. Let's just move this image so it's a little bit more centered. That's it. And then you hit enter and you're done. So let's just say hypothetically that the monitor was in bad condition. It's not, it's in great condition, but let's just say hypothetically it was in bad condition and the capacitors are the reason that that shifted up. So when I replace the capacitors, I just have to shift it down 3 notches. Totally fine in my book, not worried about that. Let's also check some scrolling, and I'll jump back in the chat in a few moments, but just give me a moment here. Well, keep the questions coming, but, you know, be patient if you don't mind. So this has really good geometry. And the way I like to tell is because it looks like the image is going right to left. Whereas if it had really bad geometry, it would almost look like the image was going like this. Like out and in, out. I'm kind of exaggerating so it'll show up in stream, but whereas this, you can really see it's just going like that. So while there might be some pin cushion and some geometry to adjust here, the main part of it is fine. And that is what I normally see when things have bad capacitors. I mean, there's a tiny bit of wobble right where it starts to go down, but honestly, I'm just nitpicking for the point of nitpicking. Check the colors. So that looks a little off. Do I have the wrong... I have it as RGB, right? Setup, input, yeah, RGB. Value. Color temperature standard. So somebody must have color calibrated this to something a little bit different. So that's cool. That's easy. I'll probably just use that colorimeter on it. I'm probably getting that wrong. All right, let me check some chats before we see stuff, and I'll readjust the camera too to make sure that it's a little bit better. Any chance of showing the downscale of modern games? Maybe, but I did a whole other video on that, so I could certainly try. What else we got? What inputs are in the back? We already showed that in the beginning, so please just check out the stream later on. How much does this thing cost? More than me. What's the gadget you're using to play games on? That's a Sega Nomad. Search RetroRGB for it. A buddy of mine, Oleg, is making an awesome board for it. Tito did a video on it. It's pretty awesome. Speedy, that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm basically just going through showing what I look at when I go to buy one of these, what I do when I get it home, just going through these menus, looking at the inputs and back. This is basically all that you would need. First I would always go check Steve Retrotech, his website or his YouTube channel and stuff. He's got so many good videos on these, but this is basically the typical overview. How much does it cost to get a CRT calibrated? Depends on the condition and depends on the CRT. A full calibration takes minimum 2 hours, probably more. But if it's a consumer TV that needs recapping, that means not only do you have to replace the capacitors, but there aren't handy little menus like this. A lot of times calibration has to do with magnets. So I would say between $200 and $500, and that's just a guess. Just a guess. Buy this PVM or a 65 LG OLED 4K TV. Hands down, no doubt, get the OLED. I love these things. I will always own at least one of those to the day I die. These are so cool. They're important for what I do, but that OLED, you could use everything on it. And if you buy a retro tank, old video games are covered. And the only thing that wouldn't be covered are old movies and old TV shows. So get yourself a really old, or a free CRT with a DVD or VCR built in, and you're good to go. So, yeah, just my personal opinion though, but I love these things. I'm not telling anybody not to buy them. I'm just saying it's a whole lot of money for something that doesn't do everything. And, they're older, they're all going to need maintenance at some point. Is there a telltale sign of leaking caps without opening the BVM? I mean, not powering it on, crazy geometry, but generally speaking, you're going to have to open it up. There is a rotation setting, a bit for life. James Campbell, not true. If I was going to use modern games with it, I'd need a FW900 chassis. Absolutely not. I could run this in 720p, no problem, and it's going to look absolutely gorgeous. Okay. Any retro consoles that seem silly to have RGB? No. So it just depends on your setup. If you're using like an OLED and an upscaler, then all of them would probably be a good idea, because then you're scaling an old video game to 65 inches or something like that. Whereas, sorry, I'm just gonna get a little focused on here. I think that's okay. Let's see if we got a moire pattern. But I mean, if you're plugging your Atari 2600 into your old CRT, then you don't need any mods. So, CCon, nope. I haven't talked to Thomas in a while, but he did say give him like a year-ish. So, anything pre-NES seems kind of useless to mod for RGB. I don't know. For scalers, it was great. When I had an RGB 2600, it looked great on these too. So, I'm making the stream full screen so I can try to see what you all are seeing. Let's see if I can show some good footage. I mean, I think this is as good as I can get it, to be honest with you. Yeah, James, I think you're splitting hairs, my friend. I think if anybody has one of these, nobody is going to go, oh, I wish I got the FW900 instead. Like, it's just, you have one of these, you can do everything. The FW900 is still amazing, but you can only do 480p and up. So, no love lost on this one. All right, let's play a game we all know. Well, not play the whole game, but let me just show the game at least. I am getting kind of like a pinkish tint to this, but it's got to be settings or something. Yeah, that's kind of pink. I gotta figure out. And because it's widescreen, you're going to be able to see the overscan on the sides for Sonic, or for all Genesis games or games that have it. That's another reason a lot of people might prefer the 4x3 ones, because you could cut those off so it'd be like original, not like on a playing on a widescreen monitor. But let me let me see what we got here. Let me try to set up input. Okay, go to slot number 6. Sync is external. That's why that was freaking out. Screen mode. This is what I was saying. How I have some for 16 by 9, some for 4 by 3. Still a little pink. Oh yeah, that's better. So somebody had just color calibrated this to their own setup or something. There's nothing wrong with this at all. Let's play Green Hill Zone, and then I'll switch to other stuff too. Basically, whatever you see that I can dig out, I will happily demo for you. The other thing too, and I will check the chat between sessions like this, but the overscan on these is way different than consumer grade CRTs. You can see all the way to the top where you can see the blue border, whereas on almost every consumer TV you can't. In fact, possibly some of the score and the Sonic's lives will be cut off. So this is a good and a bad thing. You get more of the image on a BVM, but you don't get that cut off there. So I could lag test it if you want, but it's always 0. It's all BVMs are 0. If you're really curious and you just want to enjoy seeing the numbers on here, I'll gladly do it for you. It should only take a second or two, but I wasn't planning on it unless people just wanted to see it. Yeah, this looks wonderful. I could probably do PlayStation 3 next if we wanted to check different resolutions and how things work on it. I'd love to be able to show a movie, but if I play more than like 5 seconds of it, this is going to get copyright flagged, and I don't know. But yeah, looks awesome. So I am going to leave this on a track mode while I figure out the next thing to get. Probably PS3, but I'll check the chat if anybody has a better suggestion. And we'll kind of go from there. Sam McCobb, nope, this is a friend's monitor. In fact, probably out of the 25 I have here now, 25 to 30 monitors, like 15 aren't mine. And this is definitely one of them. In fact, every monitor I showed in that video last week is either not mine or not going to be mine in a week or two. Anything you can recommend for checking the caps on these? Yes, subscribe to RetroTech. Not being sarcastic, I'm being totally honest. Steve teaches you how to do all of that stuff. Rasmus, there should be a rotation option. I'm just, I think you're probably seeing more of the weird rotation of my lopsided tripod than you are of the screen. Or it's probably a little of both, but it's not bad in person. Does this monitor support stereo audio? There are no speakers whatsoever in here. So that's the other reason why I showed in that video this week, last week, whatever, having those magnetically shielded speakers right next to it, because that's totally safe as long as they're shielded. And also PC, I showed this particular one with the Bose computer speakers. Those work great. Does this display take VGA or DVI? No, but you can use a very basic converter to convert VGA to RGBS. Or you could use an Extron box, one of the cheap ones for it. So you could actually feed it a VGA signal. Okay, let me grab PS3 while we're waiting. So one kind of funny thing, I thought I had multiple multiple HD RetroVision PlayStation cables. I wired one into my Crosspoint setup, and then I realized I must have given the other one away or lent it to somebody. So the only cables I have available are junky third party, so if you see any weird analog interference, it's not the BVM, it's the crappy cables. But you'll still be able to get a really good sense of this. Also, for anybody curious, any fellow OCD people like me, putting stuff on top of these isn't great, but there's the vent holes are in back here. You can sort of see where my hand is. There's no vent holes here, and while this is one thin piece of metal, that's why I placed the PlayStation on the corner, so the weight is being distributed across the seam, across the edges, so it's really not putting any pressure on the top. But definitely don't stack stuff on this. Even in that last video I showed footage of my old Manhattan apartment, and the top of my D32 was covered with stuff. Light stuff. Very light stuff. And it was never on with the stuff on top of it. Nuclear armament. A $150 VGA CRT can do 1600 by 1200 interlaced at 120 Hz. Why spend $3,000 for one of these that's restricted to 60, regardless of its progressive or interlaced? Why buy a classic car when you could rent a Hyundai for $100 a month? Because we fucking want to. No, all kidding aside, something like this is for people who want widescreen and for people who want all of those resolutions from 15 kilohertz all the way up. So it's somebody who would buy one of these as part collector, part CRT enthusiast, and part gamer or big time movie enthusiasts. So you're 100% right. All kidding aside, if you're just looking to game on a CRT for the purpose of motion blur and no motion blur and no lag, you don't need this at all. Any PC VGA monitor will be fine. Can you check the speakers for shielding without placing them next to a CRT? There was a magnetic field detecting app. I tried 3 of them. One seemed to work, so you could probably try that. But for me personally, I would definitely double and triple check. Nuclear armament. Thank you for understanding that I was kidding. I wasn't yelling at you. Okay. And let me just get my knockoff cables. We're in. These are absolute garbage. Don't ever use them unless you're buying them specifically to make an example video of how these things stink, or if you just need spares like I do. You don't always need the best. Sometimes you just need to connect something and make sure you get a signal. Look, even the ferrite connector thing's falling apart. And there isn't even a ferrite bead in here. That's so funny. I never knew that. There's no ferrite bead in here. They just put it there to look fancy. That is very funny. Felipe, I could certainly try. It's going to require a lot of cables that I don't know if I'm going to have available, but I absolutely will try, I promise you. Okay, so as I was talking about before, the other inputs don't have sync, so I'm going to dedicate that to component. But I don't have extra 75 ohm terminators here, so I'm going to do something not very good, but I'll do it for the purpose of science. And I'm going to borrow the ones from RGB and watch what happens as I take them off. See how the image is much brighter without that termination? So let me turn these off. It's not good to run it like that. I wouldn't, in a situation like this where I'm doing a quick 10-second demo, or if you forget to put them on and you're like, oh crap, and you turn your monitor right off, I don't think it'll ever hurt it. Okay, if I have a GameCube, could I do Metroid Prime 1 or 2? We'll see. Elite Spa, hello. So, I'm turning this on, and then I'm also going to configure... Actually, you know what? I should leave that off while I do this. Just making sure the PlayStation is actually turning off. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to set input 2 for component video, but before I get into it, so before I turn this on, because I didn't want the screen to go crazy, input configuration, format, the choices are grayed out or blued out in this case because there's no inputs there. So I'm going to select component, and here is RGB, component video, SMPTE, that's what we need, and Betacam is for pro environments. We're not going to need that. Sync mode is going to be internal because that's what, I mean, you're with component video, you're syncing on one of the colors, and that should be good for now. Let me back out and just do input 3 as the same thing, but 16 by 9, which is what I wanted to show everybody before as well. For internals, oh, it actually already is. That's pretty funny. Okay, so let's go back here. Why do some PVM and BVMs auto-terminate while others need to have them added? That is an excellent question, Smoke. By the way, what's up, dude? Good to see you. Thank you for swinging by. I think the reason was when you were in a... And this is 100% guess. This could be total bullshit. But I think the reason is that when you're in a pro environment, you want control over absolutely every piece of it. So if you want to just connect one monitor, cool. But if you want a daisy chain, then you remove those and you put them on to the other monitor. And if at any point things look weird, you throw out your terminators and buy new ones, and you want control over every single piece. So that's just my guess, but it would make sense. That's what I would do. So we found out that slot 2 is the one that I had just connected the other one into. So, okay, no problem. So that's 4 by 3. Let's set it to this. I think we're probably going to have to set it to slot 2 again. Yep. Beautiful. All right, cool. So we're going to go back here. Sorry, my PlayStation remote died, so I'm going to have to leave it plugged in for power. But let's just go and show different resolutions, and maybe I could show some examples of games in these resolutions as well. So I leave my PlayStation always set to 480i for this exact reason. What if I'm plugging into a BVM? What if I'm plugging into a consumer grade TV? So let's change it to, so we're going component D terminal. And I want to set it to 720p just for kind of the purpose of this. Actually, you know what? I've never even seen 1080p listed as an option. So let's see if that works on this. Nope. Let's try 1080i. So you could, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it on screen, but there's like ghosting next to the letters. That's the crappy unshielded cable. This is like the perfect example of why you don't buy the cables. I mean, I literally bought that one to show people this, so I get a pass. But yeah, that's the perfect example. But we're gonna do 720p. Let's see if we still get the ghosting on the letters. Yeah, that sucks. Well, it's not the monitor, so I'll have to show another example afterwards just to show you all that. But let me fire up. I know I have Daytona in here. All right. So let me check the chat, and let me also check that you could see this clearly enough. Solar Strike, I mean this honestly with no sarcasm, they're equal in every possible way. I really couldn't care. They're both the best signal you can get out of analog systems, so that's what I prefer to use. Okay. Master Safer. Okay. I don't know if I'm in 16:9 mode. I think I have to be because I set it to 720p. So, setting it to the correct aspect ratio. There you go. Beautiful. Yeah, look at that. Ghosting. Those terrible ass cables. Erwin, don't need speakers to hear the title track in my head. I know, I agree 100%. If I could sing better, I would sing it for you. So, just for the purpose of this, ignoring the ghosting, let's take a look, and I want to show the difference between 720p and 480p on this. And it's going to be hard to do with a video game. It would be way easier to do with a movie, but this right here looks to me like a flat panel. I mean, I would argue, and this is just opinion, by the way, so if you think I'm an idiot, it's totally cool. But I would argue that 720p on a BVM is too sharp. Because right now, this is so good that it looks like my OLED with, slightly less motion blur and slightly less lag. I mean, this is just too good. What I would use 720p for is modern games. Absolutely are going to look insane on this because no lag, no motion blur, so that would be a big deal. But this doesn't look retro to me. This looks modern, which, it says a lot about the remake of Daytona and everything, but to me, this just doesn't feel like a retro game. This feels just like I'm playing a really nice OLED. So, let's go to 480p and switch. So, sticking with 480p. I'm going to manually select 16:9. So, beautiful. Now, let's go back into Daytona. I think we're going to have to reboot it. Sorry, but, Now, of course, there's a lot of tweaking to be done. So if you find out that, you have good HD retrovisions, no ghosting, and you find out that your PS3 might be a little dimmer or a little brighter, you could mess with all of those things. And I'm just not really going to do that. The quick adjust buttons here are the best way, because you could say, all right, let me turn up the brightness, let me turn down the brightness. Oh yeah, this is the perfect brightness for something else, but hit the button and it goes back to what you had it calibrated on. So the quick buttons are handy, and these are what I would suggest messing with, not the main settings. I would either calibrate it yourself or pay somebody to calibrate it, and then only use these buttons for stuff. Alright, so now that we're in 480p, and by the way, I'll be checking the chat again every time I switch content, so just any questions you got, keep them coming. So now we're at 480p, and now it still looks like a BVM, or an OLED. It still looks amazing, but you have the natural scan lines of what 480p would look like. So you have the advantages of the clarity of something like an OLED, but you have the mask of a CRT running 480p. So the advantage is that you have the look that you would expect something like Daytona to look at, or especially for things like, Dreamcast and 480p and all that stuff. The other advantage of being able to see the CRT's mask, though, is it cuts through any film grain or weird interference in old movies and old TV shows. And that's one thing that drives me nuts on my OLED, is sometimes a lot of film grain on the screen just looks dirty, because the TV is just so clear you can see everything. But whereas this, like, you could see it in the cones, you could see it in a lot of the different things. The scan lines cut right through it, and it does a great job with content of all kinds. So I almost never run my D32 at anything other than 15 kilohertz or 31 kilohertz. So 240p, 480i, or 480p, because you really get a CRT experience. Now, all of that is opinion. So if you're like, screw you, 720p looks amazing on my BVM, and I'm going to only use it that way, that's fine. You're still winning. I'm just wanted to share my thoughts on it. So I'll let this kind of run out. I'll check the chat and see what we'll be playing next. Or demoing next. Yeah, Mr. Broken, I showed that in my Dreamcast video. A couple of them support it, but what they end up doing is send the same amount of lines and information, but across allow you to stretch it like this. So you lose a little detail, but at the same time, it's pretty awesome. I have a Dreamcast, but I don't have an optical drive emulator anymore. I forgot to get other ones, so I don't know if I'll be able to demo that. Solar Strike, I agree. I think this port of Daytona should be released on everything. I can't understand why it's not on the Switch. I would buy it again, even though I bought Daytona so many times in my life. How much difference did 50, 60 hertz versus 100? 100 hertz doesn't really make a difference for any content that was meant to be viewed on a CRT. I'm sure it does. RGB Rob has some videos on that, but it's not really something that most gamers would take advantage of. Seacon Art, yes, and I have a video coming out about that. There are a couple of consumer widescreen 480p TVs that are absolutely worth getting. Zero lag. They all de-interlace the image, but they do it in a really great way. Now, the Sonys are generally pretty laggy, but because there's no motion blur, 2 frames of lag on a Sony doesn't really feel like 2 frames of lag. So I would say if you have the ability to get something like Smoke just said, the XBR 960, I would absolutely do that, because I don't think most people would notice the latency, and it looks gorgeous. Solar Strike, would I hook up a computer to this? I could try that. The problem is the computer, though, because every computer I own except the one I'm streaming on is in some state of disarray. Hey, Soric, what's up, man? Yeah, Jason, there's nothing I can do about it. The only hot mics I have are so bad quality that it just would sound like garbage. So let's see what else we got. I'm trying to think of other things I could show that would be unique and different. I could show, let's see, what's the weight of that thing? About 100 pounds. I picked it up at the beginning of the stream. Can I review different CRTs in the future? I'd love to. I enjoy this. I mean, if you already own a BVM, you might just kind of be laughing at me like, alright, Bob knows how to press the menu button, but if you've never been lucky enough to see one of these, then it's kind of neat and fun. And I especially want to do videos with CRTs that aren't mine, because I don't get to keep this one. This one's leaving pretty soon. Alright, well, let's see what else we got. I don't want to show PS3 anymore, only because these cables are so terrible, but let's see what else we can do. Wasn't there a couple of Sega Saturn games that you could do widescreen with as well? Wasn't there a racing game for the Saturn? And the other thing I'd kind of be interested in too is what happens, because somebody told me a long time ago that there were settings for this, but what happens if you have something like a VCR with a widescreen movie? Every time I put it on my BVM, it didn't stretch it. It was a 4:3 image with a 16:9 movie, so you're basically watching half of your TV. Saturn widescreen hacks work on real hardware too. Yeah, yes they do, but there was also like factory ones too. Wasn't there a racing game or something? Yeah, let me see about that. Actually, you know, let me check the Saturn games I have. All right. Samuel, thank you so much. James Campbell, these PVMs don't have the scalars necessary to avoid the bars on widescreen VHS movies. That's what I thought. I can't understand what my friend was talking about that time. It might be DVD players could set it to that mode, but not VHS or Laserdisc. Can you show Wii U? Yeah, I could try that afterwards. Yeah, I think that'll work. Let's see what I got. I got Nights into Dreams. I'm not sure if that's one of the ones with it. Got like 5 copies of Daytona, because of course. What would I say is the best and biggest 4x3 BVM? Anyone you could find. But that's, I'm not being sarcastic, that is the truth. But on the flip side of things, my personal preference is to have something as high-end as a BVM with a lower TVL count. So these monitors, you can't, you know, they're so good that you could almost never see the mask, at least the vertical mask. So I prefer the ones that you kind of can, but that's just my eyes. There is no right answer. So get whatever one you can. James, I would need a 2002 to 3 KV series Sony that had the pan and scan. Do you mean a KV series TV, VCR, anything like that? Johnny the Whiz Kid, can you mod consoles? You should go to RetroRGB.com. Christmas Nights, here you go. This is the one that I know has the widescreen mode. Yeah, I could show an HDMI console after this too. Golden Jupiter Studios, no problem. I just also want to look for another widescreen game just in case that one doesn't boot. I'll do it as quickly as I can, I promise. I have a stack of CDRs from when I first tested the Saturn years ago, so I'm just going through now to see what I got. The biggest BVM was only 20 inches. You're right about that. PVMs, it did get up to 32. Oh, Johnny, I apologize. No, I don't mod consoles as a service. Yeah, my bad. I was just messing around. But no, I don't do that as a service. You should look into modders, and I think there is an S-Video mod for that. ABO hiccups doesn't work with light guns? Absolutely. I can show that in a bit as well if you want. I thought there was like a Sega Rally game that also did widescreen. That's why I just kind of wanted to look for it. Wow, I got so many of these copied games. SDL676 once used a Mitsubishi presentation monitor that could take high-resolution PC inputs, but couldn't take 480p. Yeah, very, very common. A lot of those wouldn't be able to do that. And some had different inputs that could support different resolutions. I have a couple of monitors that don't support 720p, but they do support 480p and 480i. So I have another monitor that wouldn't support 480i over the HD input. It's kind of weird, but yeah, that's pretty common to see stuff like that. Oh, Johnny the Whiz Kid, yeah, I got a 36-inch D series over there at the JVC, and it is monstrous and it is heavy, but damn, what a good TV, right? Johnny the Whiz Kid, this BVM-24 or 20L5, that is an easy and hard answer. Easy answer is, do you play mostly or watch mostly 4x3 or 16:9 content? Then that's your answer. if you say both equally, whichever you could find then. My experience with light cones on BVMs is perfect. I don't ever have issues with light cones on PVMs. In fact, the only CRT I've ever had issues with are actually that JVC D series. So whoever has it, have you tried light gun games on there? Because I also don't know if it's just that one. It could just be mine. It doesn't necessarily mean all of them. Got my Sega Saturn with the red cart, and this one is modded for digital audio. It's also fully recapped, so this one is about as pimped of a Saturn as you could possibly get. Solar Strike, I have almost no interactions with Linus. Every one I've had has been nothing but polite and professional. But I don't really know him. So the very, very little interactions just left a good impression. So, but I don't really have anything else to say, only because I just don't know him. Just trying to find my Saturn RGB SCART cable. Got it. Nice. All right, let me grab a controller and set this one up. Johnny the Whiz Kid, check out the last video about the carts that I did. That's exactly what I used to solve the TVs aren't big enough problem. Here we go. We got the biggins. Hey, Par. Yes, that is a very rare accessory that holds the remote in place. They're very, very hard to find. That's one of the reasons why this was so expensive. But yeah, I mean that was definitely my whole thing about move this out of the way, about smaller or PVMs that are 20 inches. If you set that at the normal distance from your couch to wherever your TV is, it's too small. But that's the other reason I just love those rolling carts, because just like I showed in the video, you want it to take up more of your field of vision, pull it closer. I haven't used this controller in a long time. Ooh, and it's not working. Wonder what that's all about. That's pretty crazy. I've never had a Saturn controller die before. Have any of you? Let me see if I have the other one then. Unplugging it and plugging it in does something, but nothing. Let me take another look. Not quite, Smoke. I've been swapping parts around to help with some projects, but I will always have a Nomad because this is by far the best testing console I've ever used. I have a Mega EverDrive Pro. I have Greg's battery pack on here, and this outputs all signals. I love these things. They're so good for testing. Samcom, I went through the whole price before, but this was very expensive because it came with a ton of stuff, a ton of rare stuff, like the flight case and this. So it was actually, I would call it a fair price considering what they go for now, but it was not cheap. Super expensive. Well, this is depressing. I have no idea what the heck happened to my Saturn controller. Did whoever stole my Game Boy Advance EverDrive take this thing? Uh-oh. Yeah, knock the power out too. Smart. Yeah, I was gonna try the Switch next. I just kind of did want to show this, but let me double check one last thing. Alright, I found the normal sized one. Well, Cruz, are you watching? You on this stream? Because if you are, you're going to get yourself a Saturn controller from me to repair next. Sorry, dude. Just waiting for the menus to come up. I think it's in one of these. What are Saturns even going for these days? Something fully recapped with the SPDIF mod and the FRAM mod? Probably a lot, I would assume. Okay. TV screen. Wide. So I'm going to do the opposite of what I did before. I programmed input 2 to be component video 4:3. Input 3 is the exact same thing but 16:9. But since there aren't really that many 16:9 games I'd be putting through here, I'm going to do this the long way. 16:9 underscan, 16:9 normal. And here we go. Now we have a Sega Saturn game running in widescreen. Kind of neat. And this is such a good example of so many things. This game was definitely designed with composite video in mind, because you can see those aren't transparent hearts; those are a bunch of dots. And also, it's a great example that you can't really see the detail loss. I mean, I guess you might be able to, but all the same detail was just rewritten in a wider format. So I still prefer it. I still would think that if you're playing on a scaler on a normal HD TV, or if you have a widescreen CRT, I just couldn't think of a reason why you wouldn't want to utilize the extra screen space. But you can find these on almost every console. N64, Dreamcast, obviously GameCube and past, but a lot of consoles have, or at least every console has like 1 or 2 16:9 games pre-HD era. So I'll leave that up while I'm gathering my Switch stuff. Or actually, I'll check the chat and see if there's any other suggestions. James, I've been dying to try laser projectors, so, you know, let me know what you think. My phone just beeped. I have thought that was Cruz telling me another controller. All right, fine. So let's see. 90% of my stuff is available, but I still have a couple more boxes to take down. So let me see what I got here. How about I try to get the Switch running? I'll have to run up and grab that, so I'll be like a minute, but I think I could do a Switch. I think I could do a converter to make it pretty easy to get it on here. So I think I'm going to try that. Alright, well, I'll check the chat when I get back. Leave whatever questions. Just give me like 1 minute, and I will be back with the Switch and probably a beer. Okay, armed and dangerous. Just get the hookups for this. CY Emsley, they have a Panasonic Tau 27-inch they've been keeping a hold on. That thing's still worth hanging on to. Absolutely. The ones that are 15 kilohertz only are really great TVs. I think they're all shadow mask style, so it's great. Absolutely nothing but good things to say about it. If you have one of the widescreen ones, or one of the ones that does multi-format, then there you go. Now you have all that advantage as well. So unless for whatever reason you absolutely ran out of space, I would hold on to that forever. Jason, yeah, it's my camera. Johnny the Whiz Kid wanted to ask if I've ever had an analog TV from the 70s. When I was a kid, yeah, cousin Scott and I used to have to like twist 2 wires together to get our TVs on. Oh yeah, Par. That the ceiling leak thing was way more scary than it was damaging. That was such an ordeal. But the fact that it really just messed up my ceiling was the luckiest thing, because that entire CRT wall could have been underwater. That would have been maddening and heartbreaking all at the same time. Did anybody ever answer in the chat? Did I miss the question or the answer on the Saturn? I don't even know what these things would go for anymore. So the black Saturn, fully recapped with the red cart with switchable RAM module, and it's got digital audio mod to it. Are these going up in price, down in price? Alright, this should be fun. Patty whacked, you're half right. So the camera's crooked and the rotation's crooked, but because the camera's crooked, it's making the CRT look worse. But you're right, I am a little. I'm not going to stop for that one at the moment. I'm trying to bore people as little as possible. Let's see what else we got here. What do I think of laser projectors as an alternative to CRTs? I got to use one first, but man, are they promising. 400 to 500, yeah, that makes sense. Well, almost had to sell it if the ceiling was a little worse. I guess I still would sell it if somebody really needed it, because I'm trying to stick with mostly unmodded consoles now, just because it makes testing much easier for things. So I'll explain the setup in a moment once I just get it all plugged in. So, I have my Nintendo Switch, which apparently the battery is dead, so that's going to take a minute to come on, plugged into this dock that I just got that seems to work, and it's obviously a pigtail dock, not one that you could actually, or that you have to plug into, which I like for situations like this. I then have an HDMI to VGA converter, but because it's HDMI to VGA, it's HDMI to RGB HV, and since BVMs can only do RGBS, I'm using the HD15 discard. That thing T and I came up with based on Steve from HD RetroVision circuit. And that is just going directly into the SCART to BNC adapter. So this is a pretty darn streamlined setup right here. Okay, it's booting and we'll see what we got. I might have to put it to my capture card first real quick just to change the resolution settings if we're not getting anything here. By the way, this right here is just a label. You could change that to whatever you would like. Let me try powering on my Switch first real quick, I guess. Guess we're going to have to give it a moment to charge. So, cheers everybody. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? Smoke said his triple laser projector has image processing that can't be disabled. Ooh, so pixels get smooth no matter what. RetroTink 4K should fix that. Yeah, that should help because you can just send it its native. Dada, yeah, this is the best I got. I'm on a floating mic here, so it's better than the alternative. Trust me. I'm actually not going to downscale the Switch. If you'd like to see what that's like, check out the RetroTink 5X video I did. Because there's a whole section on downscaling that shows exactly what that looks like. What are the odds Bob's doing a Saturn setup and the controller goes down like mine did? Yeah, it happens. I think I've I have that luck where just things always go wrong whenever I'm doing it on stream. But I've learned to embrace that now. Solar Strike, about to be 5 p.m. Holy shit, it's 6 o'clock? Oh, I was kidding when I said it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Wow, time goes way too fast. Jason Davison, so you can connect a Blu-ray player to that daisy chain setup for older SD/HD content. Absolutely. The only difference is you would have to use one of those splitters that I always talk about. I got one right here. That wasn't bullshit in that video. I absolutely, truly always have one of these by me. You would need one of these for compatibility, but yes. And also the digital audio extraction would certainly come in handy because these are tested and the digital extraction on it is excellent. It's perfect, pretty much. Any arcade CRTs to show one day? I only have one arcade machine, a smaller Sammy Video World. I have another coming, and I'll do a video after they arrive. Drew B. Doopy, any new beers have I had recently? I had the Meatloaf one. What is it? I took a picture the other day. I don't know if I still have it. Meatloaf the artist, not Meatloaf the taste. Nah, it's like Beer Out of Hell or something. It's like a play on Bat Out of Hell. So what is it? It is Sheben Beer Out of Hell's Lager. It's yeah. So in the cover of it's like the Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell cover. That was pretty good. But I've actually kind of been somewhat dieting, so I haven't really been drinking that much. According to Digital Foundry, the Switch downscales higher resolutions to lower resolutions, so a game that runs at 1080p can downsample to 720p. Yeah, some games are working better than others with that. Night, Rob. Does it usually take this long just to get the Switch up and running? Well, here we go. Let's try this again. No, it's not even booting. Is that normal? This is the official Nintendo power supply. Obviously plugged into AC. Get it plugged in right here. Well, while we're stuck doing that, there is one other thing I wanted to show everybody. I can't believe I didn't do this first. Here is another monitor that's not mine. Alright, let me get this back a little bit more. Shared some focus. Alright, so this is a Sony BVM-A20. This is not mine, but I did want to feature it in that last video. This was one of the ones on the cart. And for the purpose of what we're talking about here, it's basically the same. There are differences between the A and D series, but for the context of here, it's basically this exact same monitor, but 4x3. But there are a few differences, so let's take a look. Thanks, MVL. I'm just going to leave it plugged in while we're talking here. Hopefully it'll charge up enough. So, the one thing that I always was kind of interested in. So, what are you gaining or losing with either one of these? I guess let me try to push that back a little. Yeah, it's a little bit better in focus. So, let's say you're watching a 4x3 thing. That means that on this 20-inch monitor, it is 11 and a half. And on the D24, it is 10.5. So you're actually losing an inch of vertical screen real estate with the D24. So what does that actually mean? Nothing. It's a freaking awesome monitor. If you have the opportunity to get one at a good price, you should. But if you really are focused on 4:3 content, and 16:9 is a fun bonus, but you know, you got a flat panel TV you could use, you actually do get an extra inch on this one. And it's kind of interesting too, because when you think about the width of these, you know, this is 15 3/8 wide, and this is 19 3/8 wide. You know, that's a pretty big difference for widescreen content. So, because then you would just be kind of shortening it here. So that is definitely one of the things I wanted to show in this stream, is just how if you're going for 4:3 content, any widescreen BVM is really not going to be worth all of that extra money for you. Unless you're a crazy collector like me. If I won the lottery, I would absolutely buy every single one of these. They would all be worked on by Steve and Jose, and I would have one of each just for the hell of it. The highest end PVM BVM that ever existed is this, the 32-inch, in their A series companions. So the D24, the D32, and then the A24 and the A32. I think we might finally have power up here. Yes, okay. So, goodbye to that lovely A series. Bring this one back into the center. Solar Strike, though, you're never going to find them, and if you are, they're probably going to be way too much money. Yeah, Comatron, there's not really much I could do about it. Is there a variant that would do 1080p but not 240p other than PC monitors? No. No, but I mean, like we were talking before, it's really your use case and what you're going for. So, plugging this in, plugging that in, and what do we got? Alright, so kind of like I suspected. This dock is probably saying, hey, we're compatible up to 4K 30. So I think I would have to manually turn that down. So let me grab an HDMI cable real quick. Actually, you know what? I'll just do it right here. We can do this together. Oh, maybe that could be part of it. This is the AverMedia Live Gamer 4K, which I absolutely love. It is, when I first reviewed it, I didn't realize how good it actually was. So I highly recommend it, especially for the price. There's a bunch of quirks about it, but just overall, I think it's great. Alright, grab another one. Okay, grabbing an extra HDMI, and that's why I always have power stuff laying around. Solar Strike, how well does this handle retro content, both console and PC? If you mean like compatibility, it's pretty much 100%. There's a few weird things, there's a few sync issues, but it's basically what you would run into with every BVM, not just related to this. One, two. So I'm going to use this splitter for a couple of reasons. One is so that we could access the switch on my capture card, but two is going to be so that we can leave it plugged into the capture card and change the resolution on the monitor. So unplug that so I don't make the monitor go crazy. All right, let's try this again. Should have a signal in a second. Yeah. What the heck? Do not use HDMI splitters to bypass copy protection. It's basically telling you what to do. Peppy Poppy, thank you. Honestly, though, any CRT is awesome. I never worry about any of that stuff. Input. Oh, I think I had the input plugged into the output. Oops. Well, that's what I get. Live stuff never goes exactly the way you want. Okay, we're getting somewhere. I'll drop a link in the chat for people who are curious about the capture card. The only difference between when I posted this review and now is I like it more now because I beat the heck out of it and it just keeps performing properly. Oh, what the heck? Are these dead too? It hasn't been that long. Don't worry, I have another. Does anybody happen to have the? Oh wait, no, it's not. I have the 8BitDo Pro controller here, and I forgot what the button combo was to boot it. Samuel Deline found a 26-inch Panasonic Tau widescreen HD CRT on the side of the road. Holy crap! You are so lucky. Those are so good. I have a 32-inch sitting right over here, and I absolutely love it. I think it's great. Okay. No! I just got the damn controller connected. Oh no! Y plus start. Thank you so much. Much appreciated, PS1 Freak. Why am I having so much trouble with this Switch? It always just turns on when I want to play it at home. Okay. Come on, we're almost there. Yeah! Alright, it only took me 20 minutes. System settings. Okay, now let me plug the sucker in. Ooh, and we're back. Okay. Alright, let me plug the camera back in. Not sure why it's so bright all of a sudden, but okay. Drop it down to ISO 100, move that sucker a little closer. Let's see if I can get a good view of this thing. Don't know why it's freaking out, but alright, whatever. So, what would you like to see on here? Want to see like a modern game like Breath of the Wild? Oh, take care, John. Iris is closed. No, you're right. I mean, I could change it a little more. Well, let's see how it looks with Zelda. Through the game card. Oh, I thought it was in here. Well, I don't know what that is, but it could be quite a few things. It could be, let me see if I can do a quick switcheroo here. Okay, now I've bypassed the switch. I'm just going direct into that chain that I showed before. Got Breath of the Wild, and then I'll adjust the camera again once the game's loaded, so you all might be able to see it a little bit better. I do not have a PS5. I don't have any of the PS4, Xbox on a. What's wrong with the top right corner geometry? So, glad this happened. This is one of the only issues you'll see with D-series BVMs is passive sync combining circuits cause that to happen. It doesn't hurt the monitor, but you would need an active sync combiner circuit. So this is where the HD15 SCART doesn't do nearly as good a job as the Extron devices. But that's the only downside, so I'm going to continue this little demo here just so we could kind of get a move on and finish this one up. But good call and good spot. Solar Strike, it's not stupid at all. There weren't any consumer TVs with CRTs with HDMI inputs that supported 1080p. However, you could get PC monitors that can do that resolution. Alright, that's not bad. It's a little dim on purpose, just so you can see the brightness of the screen pretty well. But let's, that's a smudge on the screen, so Windex will fix that. That's my bad. Still cracks me up that we're in a modern era and we're still waiting for cartridges to load. That's so weird. We never waited for our cartridges in the 90s. But and so just to confirm once again, we are still set to 16 by 9. So otherwise the image would just look weird and stretched. But this is neat. So this is in 480p. So what you're actually getting is like a look of the Dreamcast, but with a modern console. So if that's what you were going for, this thing's pretty incredible. If that's not what you were going for, then, you know, you certainly at the very least get the bonus of no motion blur and stuff like that. I haven't played this game since, I think I beat it like 2 months, 2 or 3 months after it came out. I think that was, other than like booting that one screen to get footage for other videos, I don't think I've played this game in that long. So it's pretty neat. You get no motion blur, there's zero lag, but there is some details missing in 480p mode. So let's go see if we could switch the resolution to 720p right through here. So I wonder if that converter, that HDMI to VGA converter, can handle that. Well, I got one other very quick thing to try, just because we're here. It's only going to take 1 second. Perfect, found it. So this is, and it's a little dim here, but this is an HDMI to component video converter. So it should be able to handle 720p no problem, as well as not have that sync curl issue. So we'll see how that works out in a second here. I will check the chat in 1 second. I don't mean to be ignoring you. I'm just trying to keep things flowing and hopefully bring this thing to a wrap fairly soon. So anything else, actually, any other questions at least that you have about it, I'd be able to answer. If there's something else you want demoed within reason, especially something that I haven't done before, by all means. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, that was pretty funny. I just realized I didn't have the 75 ohm terminators on. That's why Zelda was so bright. What a dork. Alright, let's grab some component cables and we out. HDMI, component video. Wait, I think I got my rectals right over here. Sorry for all the silence. Couldn't find my component cables. Got him. Beautiful. No curl. Worked on the first try. Let me check the chat and then I'll go back in with this. Yeah, I mean, emulation versus original hardware we could talk about all day long. I like them both, but there we go. All right, so now 720p component video, no curl. Well, there's a little bit of a curl, but that could kind of just be moved around if we wanted to. Let me just check too. Setup, alignment, rotation. This is what we were talking about before. All right. Yeah, perfect now. Or you know, within reason. Let's go back to Breath of the Wild. Ooh, where am I? Up here. I'm just gonna reload that last scene so we could just see the exact same thing we did, but in a higher resolution. I'm gonna turn the AC off. It's blowing right on me. I got with a stiff neck or something. All right. Faster, safer, yeah. We went from HDMI to VGA through that HD15 to SCART, which had the passive sync combiner. That's why we used to get the curl. Now it's HDMI to component. So component video is an HD TV standard, and 720p is as well, which is why the component video converter worked, and why the VGA converter, which is designed for PC signals, VISA signals, that's why that didn't. So what we have here is the exact example that I showed with Daytona before, in that this looks like a 720p OLED with slightly worse geometry, basically. So it's beautiful. There's less motion blur. You'd have to run that OLED at with BFI or something in it, but yeah, I mean, it looks absolutely gorgeous. But that's why, for me personally, I don't normally play stuff on CRTs, modern stuff on CRTs, just because I'm used to how it looks on everything else. There are a lot of people that swear by CRTs because of the lack of motion blur, and for me, it really depends on the content. TV and movies, if something was released in 720p or up, I probably wouldn't. I probably would just play it on my HD TV. But video games, that's where there's a big deal. Uh-oh, think I'm gonna drown? Yeah, probably. Well, so the other thing, just kind of like I showed before with the PS3, let's go to like Sonic Mania. That's probably another good good example. Let that load. Let me check the chat while that's loading. Hey, what's up, Destiny? Shank 2. We get the whole crew rolling in. So you take an OLED for high-res stuff? Yeah, Shank. For movies and TV, definitely. For video games, it all really depends. But anything that has a 480p option, I would think I would prefer CRT. So, like, perfect example here. Look at this title screen. This looks like an OLED. I mean, it looks a little smoother, but, like, you see the jaggy edges, you see everything else. Which I'm not saying it's bad, but now let's switch this to 480p. No, what am I doing? There we go. Nope. Okay. Interesting that it's square. That's pretty funny. I didn't do that last time, but there we go. Alright, so now we still can see the jagged edges of Sonic's head, but you still get the mask of a 480p game. So this almost looks like if Sonic Mania were made on the Dreamcast. And by the way, I would pull the 820 over, but it's going to look exactly the same on the stream, just not widescreen. So both are amazing. If you could find either of them, definitely grab it. So yeah, like it doesn't look 240p, but it looks pretty darn close. Close to a CRT experience. I wonder, did this have fake scan lines? Let me see if they had any options. I know the PC one did. That just kind of looks weird. I don't think that was meant to be done on a CRT, but you know what? Let's see what the title looks like, at least, with it. Yeah, that's terrible. That's what we get for putting a CRT filter on a CRT. But I'll try one more. Like, alright, here's a good one. Link's Awakening. Because this was... Oh, moron. I'll be right back. This was obviously you know, a remake, but it was designed with modern TVs in mind. So this might be like the perfect example of a happy medium. I'll check the chat as well. Can we get virtual racing later? I'll end with virtual racing. What's wrong with yours? The picture tube on this one's toasted. Funny, Shank. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. Agreed. 480p CRTs are awesome. I'm just grabbing. I haven't played this game since 2019, so I really liked it though. Yeah, that's the right answer, Shank. That's the right answer. Why wouldn't you need it? Oh, this looks so cool. Oh, I want to replay this game on a BVM now. So if anybody saw the video I did on the 4K Gamer Pro, the sharp scale device, I didn't really like any of the ways I tested this game. I thought sharp scaling just kind of accentuated the weird stuff around the edges, and I thought soft scaling didn't really smooth it enough, but this is unbelievable. I mean, this is perfect. You don't notice the fact that it's a super low resolution game. Watch the Digital Foundry episode on this if you want to see all the details, but oh, this is beautiful. I wish you could turn off that stupid blur effect. Oh man, alright, I'm gonna have to zoom in with this to show you all this, because this is just too cool. The blurring is so dumb on the CRT though. I didn't even like it on flat panels. Let me zoom this real quick. I mean, this is so alright. I've been word vomiting this whole time about how older movies with film grain look amazing with CRTs because the shadow or the mask, the Trinitron Aperture Girl mask cuts through the extra film grain that's on there, and it's doing the exact same thing to this. That low resolution link that's usually kind of pixelated on even in 1080p just looks amazing on this. It cuts through so you don't even notice. And I was sitting 2 feet away, just standing back by the camera. This is ridiculous. Oh, wow, this is so cool. I mean, you don't need a BVM to do this. You could find yourself any consumer-grade widescreen CRT, but holy crap. Ryan Hendricks found this exact monitor for 2K. If it works, yeah, let's grab it. This is cool. Frog Puppet, I like the raw film grain when viewing on a projector. I know it's weird, but I'm weird, so I'm alright with it. Yeah, Shank, you're right, Bob. You don't need this monitor to get a good picture. I'll take it off your hands for you. I was actually going to message you anyway, Shank. A friend of mine is getting rid of a Sony widescreen consumer HD CRT. It might be fun to add to your collection, but I know we're both running out of space. So I'm going to end with Virtua Racing. I will check the chat before I go, of course, but obviously thanks to everybody who joined in for this. This was 50-50. Half of me really just wanted to show people what one of these is like, and the other half just wanted to mess with it on camera because I got to give it back to my friend in a bit. But yeah, this is a lot of fun. And it was cool seeing the D24 with the bracket down here. That's not something you see very often. especially fully loaded with every input card. So, wrong button. If anybody's interested, I showed this exact thing on my RetroTink 5X launch video, and I showed it downscaled to 240p, and it looked incredible. It looked kind of like what the original would be, but this is insane too, because this kind of looks like, I mean, it looks like what Virtua Racing would have been like. I don't know. I would say on the Dreamcast, but I don't think the Dreamcast would be powerful enough to do this. But it's still, that's what it feels like. It feels like the Dreamcast version of Virtua Racing in widescreen, which is, anybody who doesn't know, the original Virtua Racing was actually a widescreen game in the arcades. I think that might have been the first time a widescreen CRT was used for a public thing. I mean, they've been around, but like you wouldn't have run into one, whereas you could walk into an arcade and see one. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, though. After another lap or two, I'll check up with chat and then we'll call it a day. But this was a blast. I used to not suck at this game. I definitely remember when I was a kid owning it. I saved up to $75 for it, which was a lot back then for a video game. And I would be such a dork where every time I played it, I would ask somebody for a Q-tip and rubbing alcohol because I didn't want to dirty my game up in somebody else's Saturn or somebody else's Genesis when I would bring it over. But I definitely got good enough to come in first on the beginner track regularly, but that took some practice. The Genesis version was pretty hard, and you know, it should be at 4 frames per second or whatever it was running at. Probably should have hooked up sound for this one, but you know, I'll be done in a minute. Oh, perfect time. Let's see what we got for the chat. James Campbell, plug a Fire Stick into it and watch how low you can take the bandwidth for streaming. It's comical. I ran a bunch of experiments doing like Netflix through the D32, and I stopped because it's just too good. But I did on my consumer grade widescreen CRT. I do that all the time. In fact, one of the football games is always on that every Sunday. Frog Puppet, would it be worth picking up a CRT projector for shiggles? I know where one is, and I can probably get it for cheap. Yes, however, it is not easy. It's calibrating it and having to repair it. It's definitely going to be something that you're going to have to spend some time with. Shank, thoughts on this versus a D32? Honest thoughts. Absolute 100% honesty here. I love giant TVs and small phones. If I could find a Zoolander phone, I would buy that thing today as long as it had a decent camera. But I always want the biggest TV. And the only other, I would not call it a disadvantage, but the other thing to note is it's the same TV lines in the 24 as there is in the 32. So if you're going for a look that's so detailed you could barely even see the Trinitron mask, this is the winner. If you like to enjoy seeing some of the CRT's mask in the background blending in, you could see it a little better on the D32. And I could pick this up and walk around with this myself. That's how I got it out of this and on here. I'm kind of strong, but your average person that's strong-ish could pick this one up. I had to pick the D32 up once myself when it was about to fall, but I would never want to do that on purpose ever again. That weighed like 200 pounds. It was crazy. I'm shocked I was able to do it, but it was just one of those things where I've told the story before, so I'll skip to the end. It was sliding off a rack that was almost broken, so I just freaked out and just grabbed it and picked it up. But the bigger thing about the D32 is, like, this right here, like, excuse my butt, but that's about my shoulder width, whereas the D32 is wider, so you're kind of like doing one of these to pick it up. So if you have to carry it yourself, D24, hands down. But really, I would think, number one, can you even find either of them? And number two, what are you looking for? Are you looking for the biggest, best CRT on the planet, or would you prefer something with all of the TVLs squished a little closer together to kind of make that mask disappear. And remember, always put it on wheels, so if you just pull this thing closer, technically it's the same field of vision as the 32. Great question though, Shank. I had no idea Shiggles was a thing, neither did I, but I saw it written down and I thought it was cool, so I just repeated it. Let's see. Ryan, if you had to choose between a BVM-20G1E or a BVM-D24, get the 24 because it's for the same price. The 24 is multi-sync, so it could do 240p, 480i, 480p, 720p, 1080i, maybe a lower PC resolution in there. Whereas the 20G series has quote unquote only 600 TVL. So I actually prefer it, because it has all of the calibration and sharpness advantages of a BVM, but you could see the mask more. But it's only a 15 kilohertz monitor. So unless the 20G was brand new or something, this is going to give you way more for your money. All right, I think that's about it. So you all are very awesome. Thank you for joining me for this. I really enjoyed the hell out of it. This will be listed for in the live streams if anybody wants it. Thanks for the super chats, of course. That really helps keeping all this going. I just really enjoyed hanging out with all of you, checking this out before I have to give it back to my friend. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.